Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. This is Ruth 1b. That's the second portion of the first chapter of the book of Ruth. This is Saul Weiner, your host for the podcast. Our last podcast, we finished at the last verse we read was verse 8. Verse 7. And this week we're gonna start with verse 8. So where we left it off last time, Ruth and Orpah accompanied their former mother-in-law, Naomi, as they got up from Moab and decided to leave. And upon hearing that there was food to eat and that God had remembered the people back in the land of Judah, they decided they would head over back to return to Judah. For Naomi, at least that would have been a return. So now, Vatomer Naomi lishtei kalosel. This is verse 8. And Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, Lechna shovna, go back and return. Isha lebeis ima, each one of you women to the home of their mother. In other words, back to your families. It's interesting that they even accompanied her at all on this trip. Either some commentaries explain that they were attending to accompany her as one accompanies a guest when they leave their home. But it seems that they were doing it out of kindness for their mother-in-law. They had this deep appreciation for everything she had done for them over the years, and they accompanied her out of a sense of kindness. And we see that from the rest of the pasuk. Ya'as Adonai imachem chesed. May God do for you chesed, a kindness. Ka'asher asisem im hamesim v'imati. Just like you, both of you, have done with those that have passed on, and with me. In other words, she recognized that both of them were very kind to her, very kind to her sons when they were married to them, and their devotion was such that out of a sense of gratitude, out of a sense of kindness, they wanted to accompany her. This is a tremendous testament to Naomi's recognition of the quality of her two daughters-in-law, and a testament to what kind of people they were, Ruth and Orpah. And then she continued to say, Yitain Adonai lachem, may God give to you, meaning may He grant you, umetzena, that you should find menucha, rest, comfort and security, isha beis isha, each one of you women in the home of her husband. In other words, go home and find yourselves husbands. Fatishak lahen, and she kissed them goodbye. Fatisena kolan vativkena, and the women, presumably all three of them, raised their voices and cried out of the sadness of leaving and parting from each other. Note, and this is important because it's going to be consistent, that Naomi told her daughters-in-law to go back for practical reasons. In other words, don't follow me, don't think I have anything to give to you. Rather, I hope that you go home, find yourselves husbands, and build yourself families. It's very practical. Nothing theologic, or nothing about morality, nothing about wanting to be part of the Moabite nation versus the Israelite nation, no nationalistic, anything. Simple, practical. Go home, I have nothing to give you. But Tomar no law, but the two of them said to her, they responded, no, ki itoch noshuv le'amech. We are going to return with you to your people. It's apparent that at this point, both Ruth and Orpah recognized that this was not just a practical issue. Their issue was they wanted to state that no, we have learned something from you, and we have learned something from our attachment to your family that makes us want to become part of your people. We want to leave Moab. To us, this is something much more than finding husbands, making a living, raising a family. Not that that's not important, of course it is, but But to them, it wasn't just a practical thing of how we're going to support ourselves or how we're going to, build a practical life, but rather they wanted to attach themselves to something much greater, to the people of God. That they made that very clear. However, Naomi in the verse 11 didn't get this. She still was talking to them on a completely different level. It's like they were speaking at each other rather than to each other. The verse 11, Vatomer Naomi, and Naomi answered them, Shovna benosai, return, my daughters. And over here she says Shovna, meaning return, not just go there, but return. Lama, return to your people. Lama telach naimi. Why should both of you come with me? Ha'od, and she still didn't understand. Ha'od livanim b'me'ai. Do I still have any children in my stomach? In other words, can I still give birth to more of Hayu lachem la'anashim, that you should have husbands? Naomi it was so difficult, and most of the commentaries point this out. It's kind of almost ridiculous and absurd to think that Naomi would imagine that their intention was to come with her in order to, because she might have more sons and they could marry them, as if they're coming with her for a practical reason. Remember, Naomi is the one who left her people with her husband and her children. She left Israel. She left for reasons of hunger, and she completely dumped her people, her God, her nation, everything, her family, simply to chase material benefit of going to a place where there was more food available. She could not imagine that her two daughters-in-law were so devoted to joining the Jewish people that they would give up on all the material benefits of going home and staying with their families, to the extent that she would even imagine that, maybe they're thinking that I'm going to have sons, which is really absurd. But sometimes people are so stuck in their thoughts that they can't even, she's not even seeing straight, So, because she continues again on this theme in the verse 12, Shovna benosai lechna, return, my daughters, go back. Kizokanti miyos liish, I am too old to marry anyone. Ki amarti yesh li tikva, that I should say, well, maybe I still have hope. Gamoyisi alayla liish, even if I did find a man tonight, marry him, v'gamilati banim, and then still have children. Verse 13, halahein tisaberna ad asher yigdalo, were you going to sit and wait until those sons that I have will grow up? Halahein teagena, will you be restricted from marrying anyone for all of those years? Levotiyos leish, not having a husband. Al benosai, no, my daughters. Ki marli mi'od mikam, my lot is so much more bitter than yours. She's saying, I have no choice. My lot is so bad. Why would you attach yourselves to someone with no material benefit? Naomi was so stuck in her understanding that her life was chasing after material benefit that she couldn't imagine that her daughters-in-law had something completely different in mind. But then she throws in a little hint, these last few words in verse 13, Ki yatz'avi yad Adonai, because the hand of God has struck against me. To Naomi, this means, my lot is so bad. God is not with me. He made me lose my husband. He made me lose my two sons. He made me lose my fortune, my money, my everything. I'm destitute. I'm poor. I have nothing. However, Naomi and Ruth heard that and said, this is a completely new concept of God. This is something that we want to join. Yatzo v'yad Hashem, they realized that the reason why Naomi lost everything was because she abandoned her God, because she abandoned her people. And they had this innate understanding that by joining God, and by worshiping God, and by being with God, and by abandoning the pagan worship, the understandings that they had back in Moab, and by joining a people that was with God, they would be making this, they would be entering a covenant which is so much more valuable than material goods. Vatisena kolon vativkena od, and they raised their voices and cried even more. They cried and cried, and one of them got the message from Orpah, from Naomi. Vatishak Orpah lachamuta, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye and left. She said, all right, she's right. Why would I go back to a situation Why would I go back to a situation that's so hopeless? It doesn't make any sense. And she turned around and left. However, Ruth, Dovkaba, she stayed attached to her mother-in-law. She stuck with it. Now, Vatomer, so, however, Naomi still didn't understand. She says, Hinesha v'imtech, your sister-in-law, she decided to return el amah v'el Eloheha, to her nation and her gods. Shuvi acharei v'imtech, you go back and follow the steps of your sister-in-law. It seems that Naomi is getting a little bit the message here, finally, that by the return, she's not just returning to a situation of material wealth, but she's also going el amah v'el Eloheha, back to her nation and her gods, going back to her ways. Orpah was convinced not to join. At this point, Ruth says no. Vatomer Ruth said, Al tivki ibi, stop pushing me. Lo azvech lashuv me'acharayach, stop pushing me to abandon you and to turn from behind you and not follow you. I am here to follow you. Not just, and Ruth says nothing about finding husbands, building a house, making a livelihood, eating food, nothing. She says, Ki el asher telchi elech, I am going with you. Where you go, you are returning to your people and to your God. I am going with you to your people and your God. Uvasher tolini olin, I will sleep where you sleep. Amech ami, your nation is my nation. I am ready to adopt a new nation, a new nationality. Velohayach Elohai, and your God is my God. Ba'asher tamusi amus, where you die, I will die. V'sham ekover, and there I will be buried. Ko yaseh Adonai li v'cho Yosef. This is what I am ready for God to do this to me, v'cho Yosef, and He can continue to treat me this way. So Ruth is saying clearly, I am not doing this for financial benefit or to find a husband or anything. God can treat me this way. I can be without a husband. I can be starving. I can be everything. But I am ready to stick with God. Only death will make me part from me and you. I am ready to stick this out all the way because I am doing this because I want to join your people. I want to join your God. Batere, and Naomi saw that she was pushing and she was determined to go with her, and she stopped speaking to her. The point here that Naomi just stopped. It doesn't seem like from these words that Naomi fully got and understood and appreciate what Ruth was about, but she recognized that Ruth wasn't going to turn around. So we continue. They continue on the road, and we go on to verse 19. The two of them traveled along the road ad bo'ana beis lachem, until the two of them arrived in Bethlehem. Vayehi, and it was Kivo'ana beis lachem, when they arrived in her original town. Vatehom kol ha'ir alehen, and the entire city was in tumult about it. They were all buzzing with excitement, as some of the translations say. Vatomarna, and they says, Hazos Naomi, is this Naomi? This comment is a comment regarding her name, Naomi. Naomi means sweetness. And the people are saying, is this the one who went with the name of sweetness? They went with all these grand plans of wealth and riches when we were poor here, and they went with all these grand plans. She went with her husband and her sons, and now she's back. And look at her. She's anything but Naomi, anything but sweet. She's bitter. As she's about to say, Vatomer alehen, and she said to them, Naomi said to the people of her former town, in her old hometown, Al tikrena li Naomi, don't call me Naomi for sweetness, but rather kirena li mara, call me mara, bitter. Ki heimar shadai li miod, God has been very bitter to me. Ani Malaya halachti, I left here full. V'rekom heshivani Adonai, and God returned me here empty. Lama tekrena li Naomi, why are you calling me sweet? V'Adonai onabi, when God has caused me pain. V'shet shadai herali, and God has been bad to me. This is fascinating on several levels here, because first of all, the people in the town were all in a buzz over Naomi, but there was not a single comment about Ruth. No one said a word. Is this Naomi? And who is this coming with you? Who's this young lady here? Not a single comment. And making it even more glaring is when Naomi says, I left full and I came back empty. Well, yes, it's true that you left with your husband and sons and you lost them, which is horrific and tragic and terrible and understandable to feel bitter about it. But what do you mean, Reikam Heshivani Hashem? What do you mean that God returned you empty? God did not return you empty. He returned you with this young lady who's standing by her side. It's almost as if Ruth was faceless, nameless, nothing. Especially in light of what happens in the end of the story, and I know I'm jumping a little bit ahead of myself. The end of the story in which we know that Ruth really was the hero of the story, the heroine. I mean, she is the one who ends up establishing the home that brings about the kingdom of Israel. She is the matriarch of all of the kings of the Jewish people for generations. Ruth is the hero, what she does. But now, at this point, she's completely faceless and completely ignored. It's so often in life when we approach a situation and we see things that look like a disaster. We see what we think we see. But the redemption is staring us in the face. It's right in front of us, but we completely ignore it. The thing that's the most important detail, we completely pass over it. We look at every other detail. This is no good. That's no good. This is no good. That's no good. Where do I look? Do I look here? Do I look there? The one thing that's there, that is everything, we don't even notice. Vatashav Naomi, but the Pasuk, the Navi, the prophet here, the writer of the book, makes it very important to tell us right now that this glaring thing that everyone missed, Vatashav Naomi Verus Hamoavia Kalosa Ima. It emphasizes. The pasuk tells us no. Naomi came back. However, the pasuk, the verse tells us, the prophet tells us to remember that Ruth, the Moabite woman, her daughter-in-law, was with her. Hashavam Mistei Moab, the one who returned from the Stei Moab. It doesn't say that they returned to Moab, but the one. The Torah emphasizes. Rus HaMoavia, Kalasa, Ima, Hashava, Mistei Moab. The one, she was with her. Vehema ba'u Beis Lachem. And they are the ones that came to Beis Lachem. The Torah is reminding us, the Navi is reminding us, that she did not come back empty-handed at all. She came back with Ruth, the Moabite woman. What everyone else ignored, the pasuk is reminding us not to ignore. And when did they come back? B'tchilat Kitzir Seorim, in the beginning of the barley harvest period. And that sets the stage for the next chapter. Thank you so much for listening to and studying Ruth chapter 1. Looking forward to studying chapter 2 together.